Welcome back, everybody, to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast. I am your co-host, Billy Musia. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Jody Smith. Tonight, we're going to run through some running back rankings, some tight end rankings, and some wide receiver rankings. We're going to be having a shorter podcast tonight because we have some rankings to finalize before the Thursday night football match kicks off. Yours truly is sitting right now currently at number 2, Jody. The pressure's on. The final week of the rankings competition. Trying to catch Pat Thorman over there at Establish the Run. Sean Connor had a outstanding week last week. Climbed, what was it, 10 spots? I think he climbed 10 spots in the rankings. He just annihilated everybody in the weekly rankings last week.
Yeah, just a huge gap. I mean, he was first, and like second was, about normally the same gap between being, 10th and 80th or something like that. Just crazy.
Yeah, it was like a 20-point gap, which is just astronomical in accuracy. I messaged him, DM'd him, and said, "Holy accuracy, Batman." And he put LOL. I was surprised to see it myself. So outstanding job on his part for just annihilating the competition last week, including me. Let's start off with the running back position. Let's start with Cam Akers. Finished as the running back 1 last week. Gotta love the usage. 75% snap share last week. 64% rush share last week. He also saw 7% target share. Malcolm Brown and Kyron Williams only combined for 15 targets, or I should say 15 snaps total combined between the two of them, compared to Akers' 49. What are we thinking this week with the Rams? They're facing off first the Chargers. I have him as running back 16. You're at 17. ECR is 18. So all three Ducks line up in a row. We're both better than the ECR. Tell me why you like Cam Akers.
Well, you hit on it just a second ago when you talked about that 75% snap share, which is kind of inconceivable when you saw the way that the Rams were using their running backs, and Akers in particular, earlier this year. It was one of the more difficult backfields to handicap from a week-to-week basis, but now he's really looking healthy. He's kind of taken over as that lead dog that most of the analysts thought he was going to be all summer. Bill, you and I were a little skeptical of Akers, mainly because of coming back from the Achilles injury. Obviously, is difficult. It's highly possible that maybe his body has just gotten a little healthier. Maybe it's an issue of defenses and are maybe respecting Baker Mayfield a little bit more. I don't know. But again, 64% of the rush, got to like that last week. And, this week red zone usage. That's been key for Akers' resurgence lately. I think he's got 6 touchdowns here in the last month or so. That's been, hugely impactful for his fantasy value, because without those, he'd just be a middling RB3. But this week, good matchup. You're playing the Chargers, who allow the 8th most fantasy points to running back. So I don't see a lot of reason to, hesitate on Akers this week. I figure if that kind of usage continues, he's going to be a really strong RB2. And at this point, if he's helped you win your first couple of playoff matchups, generally you want to stick with him this week.
Cam Akers told McVay, "I'll give you back the photos I have of you if you get rid of Henderson and give me the ball." And that's what we've seen. Cam Akers finally getting the ball. But let's move on. Isaiah Pacheco, Kansas City versus Denver. This is one I've been going back and forth in my head. Yesterday I was on the Fantasy Pros podcast. Yesterday hadn't finalized rankings, and it was a little early for me, but I had him at 26 yesterday, was doing some research today, moved him all the way up to running back 21. I noticed you have him at 21. ECR is at 24. I think it's going to be more of an Isaiah Pacheco game than it's going to be a Jerick McKinnon game. They're nearly 2-score favorites here against Denver. We've seen Jerick McKinnon, who has pretty much been dominating the snap share, but he's been heavily involved in the passing game, not as much in the running game. So from a game script standpoint, this game script should favor Isaiah Pacheco. We look at Denver. They've given up the 14th most points to the fantasy running back position, the 12th most rushing yards to the running back on the season, 13th fewest, though, rushing touchdowns. So I'm kind of going to play both sides here of being a little bit of devil's advocate. They have given up the 11th most receiving yards, and this is why I've gone back and forth in my head, because it's on one side they're here, the other side they're here. We talked about the snap counts earlier. Pacheco has seen more rush share, though. Pacheco saw 56% of the rush share week 13, 56 in week 14, 45% in week 15, 63% in week 16. Although kind of going back to McKinnon, he had that 5 touchdown spree. He's had 5 touchdowns in 4 weeks. Target share has been where he's been dominating, 19.5% week 15, 21% week 14, only 11% last week. And snaps have kind of leveled off here. So last week we saw 47.2 McKinnon, 49% to Pacheco. Week 15 was ugly. 62% was McKinnon, 35% was Pacheco. That being said, game script heavily favors Isaiah Pacheco this week. We're both thinking relatively the same in terms of rankings. What is your mind thinking in terms of game script, and what do you imagine is going to play out this week for Isaiah Pacheco?
Yeah, that's the key thing. There's that the 12-point home favorites, and you're talking about a Denver team that's in complete turmoil. So for us, it's really hard to handicap this game. Like, is this team going to completely collapse, or are they going to rally around a new coach? It's just it's really, really difficult to pinpoint at this point. But when I'm looking at Pacheco, it's that, like you said, going back to week 11, he's gotten pretty close to 60% of the rushing share for the Chiefs. I know you hit on those numbers just a second ago, but if you look back from weeks 11 through 14, he had 4 straight top 20 half-point PPR outings. It dipped a little bit here the last couple of weeks because McKinnon's taken on that more of a receiving role. We don't know that they'll necessarily need that this much in this particular game. But the key thing, what I'm looking at, is just how bad the Broncos defense has collapsed against the run. Looking back on their last 3 games, they're a bottom 3 fantasy defense in terms of allowing fantasy points to running backs. They've just completely been annihilated. I looked back, in their last 7 games, the Broncos have allowed 5 running backs to hit 100 yards, 4 on the ground, and McKinnon himself had a 100-yard receiving game against this team. So really, really good matchup. I mean, normally we, from a fantasy perspective, we see our opponents playing Denver, and that's where we like, all right, hold up. That's only applicable, I think, for the passing game, because at this point, Denver's been very vulnerable to the run. I like McKinnon. I like the game script here. My only hesitation with him, and it's been the same, Billy, throughout this most season, is he's not really that involved as a receiver, and the Chiefs tend to get really cute around the goal line.
Well, he also had that fumble, right? So you have to think about, what is the coaching staff thinking about when they get in the goal line? The last thing you want to do as a team is fumble inside the red zone. And we've seen him fumble. We've seen him lose the ball. I think that's why we've seen a lot more McKinnon in the red zone. It breaks down to trust. And, I mean, if we didn't have those fumbles, I think this would be Pacheco's, job inside the red zone, but we saw it. And rookie running back, fumbles, red zone, that doesn't add up to success. That's why we've seen a lot more Jerick McKinnon in the red zone, which it also opens up the offense, because McKinnon is just much more dynamic in the passing game. So it keeps the defense honest. It allows them to get creative in the play calling. And so I think that's why we've seen a lot more McKinnon, hence his hot streak. But Denver, this matchup, the overall game script just not adding up for McKinnon this week, I think. Something that has added up for the last couple of weeks is Zach Moss and his fantasy points. He found life here inside Indianapolis, running back 34 last week, running back 39 the week before. Saw 63% of snaps in week 15, 72% in week 16, 44% route rate week 15, 61% Jody last week. Is Moss officially a viable starter?
Well, you have to look at it from this perspective of the way they've used him the last 2 games. Plus, they had apparently a shouting match with Deion Jackson. You have to say, yes, the thing that stood out to me last week was that Moss had 89% of the rushing attempts for the Colts. And this is a team who has been abysmal all year through the air, but in particular last week, they weren't able to get anything done. So it feels like that's probably what the Colts are thinking, like, oh, let's just keep the ball, on the ground as much as we can. And in particular, this matchup. So I looked back, it felt like when you look at the totality of the New York Giants defense, it looks respectable. But I looked back from what this team has done since November, like going back into week 10, and they gave up 94 yards to Dameon Pierce. They gave up 154 rushing yards to the Lions, 92 yards to Ezekiel Elliott, 96 Brian Robinson from Washington, who hit him up again for 89 a couple of weeks later. And then they gave up 144 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns to Miles Sanders. So this is the kind of defense where if you have a back that's going to come in and take such a large share of the rushes, like we just said, 89% last week for Moss, it feels like the kind of game where he's going to be able to get 18 to 22 rushing attempts. And at that point, he certainly becomes a very viable RB2.
Those numbers you just gave were hashtag not good, Jody, from a defensive standpoint.
Not.
So it's interesting to see Moss have some life in him. Unfortunately for JT owners, these are all the numbers we were hoping to see from Jonathan Taylor, except a little bit more on top of that, touchdowns and more yardage, but it is officially Zach Moss season apparently in week 17 here in 2022. I see all the comments inside the chat. We have a lot of people here, Jody, who are in championship weeks. Giselle reached out to me and said 5 out of 6 of his leagues, he made the championship because of our podcast as well as our rankings that he has used through the site. So congratulations, Giselle. Jose Pana, another
quite remarkable. 5 out of 6. That's a excellent job. Maybe we gave you some good advice here and there, but to get yourself in that many championship games, hat tip to you, because like I said, it's always the person who hits submit lineup that should take the ultimate credit and or the ultimate blame when it comes to things. We can come by and hopefully we gave you some good advice throughout the year, but hat tip to you. That's phenomenal.
Jose reached out to me and said, if I recall, Jose, correct me if I'm wrong here, but he had 50% of his teams meet the championship as well. So congratulations, Jose, and glad to have you here on the podcast. If anyone else in the chat tonight has made the championship, and we have helped you along the way, we would love to hear from you and congratulate you on your successful year. We will get to questions here shortly. I see all the questions building up in there. We're already on the wide receiver position. Like I said, we have a quicker podcast tonight, so we have a lot more time to answer your start-sit questions. So please bear with us. Be patient. We will get to all your questions in there, I promise you. Wide receivers, Jahan Dotson. Jody, you and I were both higher on Jahan Dotson last week. We talked off air. We talked on air about Jahan Dotson. I think you and I were the only two in the top 20 in the rankings competition that were plus ECR on Jahan Dotson. This week, it looks like ECR has officially moved. I'm at wide receiver 33. ECR's at 33. You are at 36. We have, their 2-point favorites here versus Cleveland. Cleveland's the 7th best versus the wide receiver position. Number 1 in the slot, though, but some of these metrics are skewed because teams run so much on them, right? They're horrible against the run. That being said, we have Jahan Dotson, who runs about 45% of his routes out wide. 52% of them are ran in this slot. This team is also bottom 6 versus wide receivers out wide, so that's benefiting him at least nearly 50% of the time. We have to like the usage. 87.1% of snaps last week, 80.7 in week 15, 87 and 88% route rates the last 2 weeks. If he's going to have a good game, we expect to see it a little bit more out wide. Quarterback this week is looking like it's going to be Wentz, who in the beginning of the year, we saw a nice little touchdown streak from Jahan Dotson as well. That being said, we look at the target usage during the time and the splits with Wentz versus Tyler Heineke. And we have Wentz, who seems to have favored Curtis Samuel the most. Curtis Samuel saw a near 20% target share during those splits. But Jahan Dotson still a favorite in the red zone and still getting touchdowns. What's your take on Jahan Dotson this week? You're a little bit lower than ECR. Walk me through it.
It's just being a little hesitant with the quarterback switch. You hit on it nicely there, that Carson Wentz seemed to show a lot of favoritism towards Curtis Samuel. The bigger impact will probably be on Terry McLaurin, who hasn't really synced up with Wentz much this year. With Dotson, you got to love the production. He's been wide receiver 8, 18, and 12 the last 3 weeks. He scored 3 consecutive games, and that's the key to me is for him to be as high as he is. We're kind of counting on that touchdown and the matchup. You talked about the Browns. They're actually they got some pretty good perimeter cornerbacks. They've allowed the sixth
Ward.
fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. Billy, you hit on it brilliantly when you said, "Yeah, it's like the Houston Texans. Your numbers look great against the pass and against fantasy wideouts when people are running for 175 yards a game against you." But it's all with it that we can, look back here. It's possible, Billy. You're the one who talked to me after we went off the air last week. You talked me into Dotson. So again, you said that we were one of the few people. It's like I helped you with DJ Moore last week. So sometimes we get them right. We're one of the few people that were in a positive. It's possible that after we look at some things, I'll get him up, higher. I'm only, I'm around where his value is.
Splitting hairs right now.
Right. It's just a tad bit lower, just simply mainly because, matchup, but then also it's the questions with Carson Wentz, because most of this production that Dotson on this hot streak has come from Taylor Heineke. So, anytime there's a quarterback switch, something to be alerted to.
Okay, fair enough. A player that I am actually a little higher on you, actually 5 spots inside the top 30, so that's a little bit larger of a gap, and that wide receiver is Gabe Davis. Buffalo is facing off for Cincinnati this week. We have the second largest over-under of the week at 49.5. The snaps are there for Gabe Davis. Week 15, he saw 98% of snaps. Week 16, he saw 88% of snaps. Route rate is also there. Week 15, 93% route rate. Week 16, 85% route rate. Bengals are tougher out wide than they are in the slot. I've already talked about it earlier in the week that I thought this is going to be a potential blow-up game for Diggs. That being said, potential shootout as well. What's your take on Gabe Davis this week and this game in general for Monday Night Football?
The Bengals are a pretty respectable secondary. They're top 10 against fantasy wideouts. That's something to be concerned about. I do like what you said, that the over-under is second highest of the week, which is good. But Davis just hasn't been doing it for me. He's just he's developed into this touchdown-dependent option that feels like he should be getting more consistent volume. He was one of the more polarizing people this summer that we all talked about, and I think eventually, his ECR may have been a top 25 guy this past August. But when you look at what's been happening lately, he hasn't been a top 30 wide receiver since week 8. He's been under 50 yards receiving in 6 out of 9 games. That's that lack of consistent volume is a little concerning to me. We've seen Buffalo now start to use 2 running backs, and maybe that's affected how many opportunities Gabe Davis has gotten. I'm not expecting weather to be much of a factor in this game, so that's kind of working in his favor. But it's probably hard for people that have been using Davis all year to go ahead and sit him this week. It's just it's that lack of consistency that I like to see out of a guy that I'm starting as my wide receiver 3 every week. It's been a little bit of a concern for me. So hence I'm just a little bit lower, and I've been a little bit lower on him almost every week.
Okay, so call me crazy, but I'm starting Gabe Davis in a $10,000 league for all the marbles this week, Jody. Mm-hmm. Starting Gabe Davis this week over Jerick McKinnon and over Juju Smith-Schuster. Talk me out of it, or
I can understand sitting Smith-Schuster. Kind of another low week for him. You're playing Denver, outstanding secondary.
And I also have Josh Allen Diggs, so I'm going for the Buffalo stack here. I want to have a sweat Monday night.
Well, that's understandable. You're giving yourself what's Buffalo's implied total? It's got to be 24, 25, 23.5.
49.5 is the game line.
By you taking that approach, you're giving yourself a pretty good odds that you're going to get the majority of that production. So I can definitely buy into it. I like what you said earlier about Diggs. Diggs has been a little cold spell, at least for someone who's an elite option like him recently, and it feels like this is the kind of game where maybe a get right opportunity for him. But I won't argue it with you. I understand. I think as hot as Jerick McKinnon is in this particular instance, I probably would stick with him. But
even with the game script,
that's a concern. It feels like if this game gets out of hand, that maybe Jerick McKinnon is only in for half the game. So I get it. I see what you're getting at here. Like I said, I don't really have an issue with it because of what you said about having Diggs and Josh Allen. So,
All right, I'm going to flip the script. The analyst asking the listeners tonight, your options are Gabe Davis, Jerick McKinnon, and Juju Smith-Schuster. Who would you start? Throw it in the chat. I want to see it. This is for all the marbles, folks. This is first place pays out $50,000. Second place is $30,000. So it's a significant difference in payouts. Third place, because it's a 4-team shootout. Third place gets $10,000. Fourth place gets zilch. There's a big difference here in money. So I've gone through all my analysis. I have the lineup set as is. I want to hear what the listeners say tonight. I'm flipping the script, Jody. You didn't talk me off the ledge.
Let's see in a few minutes what they say. Then we'll readdress it.
Okay, we'll come back to that once we get to questions. First one already in is you got to go with Jerick McKinnon. I got big marbles. Walking around like Stan's dad on South Park. Another one says you got to go with Gabe. Okay, everyone's split here as well. All right, we're going to come back to this one. This one says Davis, but I would be sweating this out between him and McKinnon. Okay, all right, we got two so far agreeing with me. I'm liking it. Okay, something I'm not liking though is Jarrett Stidham this week, starting for Las Vegas. Devontae Adams. Oh man, Devontae Adams. He has killed me here in this league. I have him in the same league as well. He's in the lineup. I'm not feeling positive about it, but the last couple weeks we have seen Devontae Adams. He has a combined 2 weeks. This is 2 weeks combined, Jody. 43 yards on 18 targets. That seems almost impossible to do, but he's done it. Week 15, 96% snaps. Week 16, 98% snaps. Route rate, week 15, 93%. Route rate, man, say that 15 times. Week 16, 94%. So we know it's elite. I don't need to tell you that's elite. But Jarrett Stidham, they're facing the Niners. The Niners are bottom 9 in the league, though, the last 4 weeks versus the wide receiver position. Can Jarrett Stidham get the ball to Devontae Adams, or is this going to be a heavily favored run game, which the Niners are elite versus? No one scored over 60 rushing yards against the Niners. Do they try to beat that and be the first team to get 60 yards versus the Niners, or do they try to let Stidham throw the ball and focus in on a target?
Well, those numbers that you just rattled off, it's the main reason why we've seen the Derek Carr debacle that came out yesterday, that we won't be seeing him in a Raiders uniform again, and that's where the blame mainly lays. You have a wide receiver like Adams playing that many snaps, and you can't get the ball. It's almost like McSorley 2 weeks ago throwing 10 targets to DeAndre Hopkins and him coming away with 1 catch for 4 yards, except we've seen that in 2 games, and it's just completely unacceptable. But, this week, clearly all of us are concerned about Jarrett Stidham. It's complete unknown factor. Sometimes when a backup quarterback comes in, if anything, all they do is funnel all the targets to the number one.
Exactly.
Other times we see backup quarterbacks who are used to playing on the scout team. They target the guys that they've been practicing with, so it's completely unknown. I'd like to think that Josh McDaniels is smart enough to figure out. Okay, we
don't ever use the word Josh McDaniels is smart in the same sentence, please.
Okay, let's just say somebody on that team figures out, hey, what's been going wrong? We got to get the ball to Devontae creatively somehow. We got to get him the ball behind the line of scrimmage. We got to do something different. Like we said, we've seen Adams, his ECR's plummeted down to 8. Last time I looked, it may have dropped further. But at this point, Billy, I mean, if you've ridden Devontae Adams so far, we've seen time after time he can, on one play, he pays off his draft status. And, this matchup on paper, you think, it's the 49ers, they're screwed. Plus, the Raiders have an implied total of 15.75 points. That's the second lowest. Only the Titans tonight have a lower implied total. But the 49ers have actually allowed the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. This team, that's been a little bit of an issue for them. That's been the way to attack them.
But does this front just eat up the Raiders? That's the front. The secondary has a lot of points, but the front has just been sacking like crazy.
Right.
Look at what Bosa has done.
I think at this point you come to hoping that there's some sort of that they keep Adams and the starters in the game and that they're able to come through. Maybe if the 49ers get out to 15, 20-point lead, that they keep throwing the ball and whatnot. But I personally don't see how, if you have Devontae Adams in your lineup, that you could bench him. I know it's been 2 terrible weeks in a row. Maybe all these people that have 5 championship squads out of 6 teams drafted, that's pretty awesome. Maybe they have really, really deep rosters where they can afford to take that chance. But I'm probably going to, stick with him. He'll end up being around, I think he's my wide receiver 14 right now. He may.
Yeah, so you have him at 12. I have him at 14. So we're both significantly lower than ECR. ECR is at 8.
It'll probably end up falling a little further. Yeah, but what I'm basically saying with that route is, yes, I understand all the factors. Jarrett Stidham, terrible production the last 2 weeks, and in a matchup that on paper looks bad. But I still think Devontae Adams is right there, as a wide receiver 1, and the vast majority of teams that have him on a roster, really can't afford to sit him this week.
All right, let's talk about let's same team, different player, different position. Darren Waller. Waller returned week 15 from IR. Has not seen full snaps even his return. He only saw 47% in week 15, 40% last week in week 16. His route rate also a little under the average here for what we consider a number 1 tight end. Week 15, he saw 63% of his route rate. Week 16, only 45%. You have him as tight end 18. I have him as tight end 14. Mine will more than likely adjust after this podcast. ECR is at 14. Again, is this a Jarrett Stidham effect? Are we concerned about the matchup? Niners are also very tough versus tight end position. Yep. What's your thought process here?
It's the same. I wrote that it's the same concerns with Devontae Adams. Yeah, you're switching to a backup quarterback, so it can possibly be really good, or it can possibly be really, really bad. And the snap share, like you said, it actually dropped 10% last week, which was kind of curious, but. Matchup's terrible. The 49ers have only allowed 3 touchdowns all season to tight ends. They've given up the 4th fewest fantasy points all year, but they've been, completely shut down over the last half of the season. No tight end has topped 35 receiving yards in the last 8 games against the 49ers. That's a huge concern. This is a team that's playing. They have outstanding athletes at linebacker that are able to get out there and cover tight ends. They've completely shut them down pretty much all year. Travis Kelce was the last tight end who was able to do much of anything on them. And, again, you're trotting out a complete unknown at quarterback. I would this is a fade for me. For me, ranking Darren Waller at tight end 18, that's kind of saying I'm not really comfortable starting him anywhere. It depends. Tight end.
We're only graded on 15 at the tight end position in Fantasy Pros. You're outside now the top 15. Are you worried that he may catch 1 touchdown, 7 yards, and be inside that top 15?
No, because like I said, from me as an analyst standpoint, knowing that the 49ers have only given up 3 all year, and I think only 1 in the last 8 or 9 games. Plus, when you're looking at the way Waller has been used, we had a declining snap share last week. How much do you read into how bad Derek Carr has been? I know he scored in his first game when he came back. No, by me ranking him outside of the top 15, what I'm saying is I don't like his odds of scoring, and you take away the touchdown against this defense. I don't, I have a trouble seeing him get 4 or 5 points in a standard scoring. So at that point, I don't see how you risk starting.
Okay. On the other side of the coin, we have Cole Kmet versus Detroit, which is the largest over-under of the week. Snaps have been elite. So week 15, 100% of snaps. Week 16, 95% of snaps. Route rate also great. Week 15, 79%. Week 16, 93%. Detroit gives up the 6th most fantasy points to the tight end position on the year. They have been better as of late, though. They're only the 12th worst for the last 4 weeks. Still bad, but a little better. What's your take on Cole Kmet this week?
I love him. I think I moved him into my top 10. I know he's at least top 12. He may have been top 10 now. But right now the Bears are dealing with a banged-up receiving core. I believe all of their receivers today were listed as limited. Dante Pettis, Chase Claypool, Equinemius St. Brown, I think all were either out of practice today or limited, which is a huge concern. And
It's funny
really,
that we even call those guys receivers, but
as
yes,
we talked about with DJ Moore last week, the Lions have been destroyed, shredded, whatever you want to use, all year against the slot. And I looked it up because it felt like to me we've seen a lot of routes out of the slot for commit. Now I know you can get various sources here. Pro Football Focus has Cole Kmet as a 43% slot rate. So if you're going to have Dante Pettis, who kind of has taken on more of the slot role there, if he ends up, since he was actually downgraded today, there's a better chance than average that he is going to miss this game. So that's telling me that we're going to get more slot opportunities for Cole Kmet. So I love him this week, and like you said, easily the highest over/under of the game. We know how Detroit can play at home, so I'm expecting a big game on the ground for Josh Fields. So I'm hoping that the Bears can keep pace. It should be a fun game.
All right, that's it for the show notes. Let's hop into the questions. Naughty. So I don't think he's aware, but Malik Davis is not starting tonight. Oh no, sorry. Do I really start Malik Davis? He said. I was thinking for some reason I started thinking of the quarterback over Rashad White. No,
I got you. My buddy did the same thing earlier today.
Yeah. So no, I'm still starting Rashad White over Malik Davis. What about you, Jody?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at things simply, you could see an easy scenario where this game is 28-3, 31-0 in the third quarter, and they're, obviously the Cowboys at this point have won the game. The Titans are clearly not going to make any effort to win this game, so you can make an argument for it. But yeah, it just feels like it's getting too cute. You're basically only relying on second half garbage production, and that's always a risky strategy.
If there's one thing Tennessee is good at on defense, is against the running back, though.
That's true too.
It's
a very good run defense.
They're horrible versus the tight end, horrible versus the receiver core. But I think that the running back, they're still stout. So I'm still starting Rashad White over Malik Davis. Next one we have is, are you starting Garrett Wilson or David Montgomery or Kirk? Pick two.
Oh, you got Mike White back under center. Yeah, you're gonna have Garrett Wilson's easily going to be a top 20, top 15 option this week.
I have him at 13 right now.
Yeah, I mean that's like
one spot ahead of Devontae Adams.
The magic that those two had, and you're talking about a pretty vulnerable secondary. The Jets are actually road favorites in this game, so yeah, I'm on board.
Okay, how about Montgomery versus the Lions, who were just gashed for 300 yards,
Yep.
Or you have Christian Kirk. And Christian Kirk here on Jacksonville is facing Houston, who...
tell you what, again, it might be just because the Texans are so bad on the ground, but the Texans have been really good in terms of limiting production to wide receivers. I don't know how or why. They're not even have their first-round cornerback, Derek Stingley, most of the year, but they've been good, and it's not just it's not just an anomaly thing now because we're in week 17, and this game is meaningless for Jacksonville. Their Super Bowl, their playoff game, their championship is next week against the Titans. So I'd rather start Montgomery. We saw how how bad Detroit slipped up last week. It gets to run, and even though Montgomery has lost a little bit of snap share to Khalil Herbert the last couple of games since Herbert's returned, he's still getting plenty of touches, and he's been really, really productive with them.
Plus, you already hit on the talking points that all the receivers are injured. We'll probably see a little bit more of the running back action here. Two running back sets.
And the 51 over-under, 51.5, whatever it is.
I'm going to say you want a piece of that game as well. So also, kind of something else to consider is that Jacksonville has nothing to play for this week. Everything comes down to next week, week 18 versus the Titans. All or nothing against the Titans, so it may be in their best interest to rest starters the second half if they're ahead. So I agree with you. I'm going David Montgomery here and Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is my wide receiver 13 on the week.
And I believe Kirk didn't do much in the previous game against the Texans. Actually, the Jags lost that game, and they scored, I want to say, 3 points. So if that matters.
Okay, next up we have is 1 point PPR. Pick two. Foreman, I think that's Boston Scott. Ramondre Stevenson, Metcalf, Pittman, or DPJ?
And Pittman's interesting, but like I said, I mean, we don't know what to think out of that offense right now.
God,
I mean,
Foles was shit last week.
yeah, it can't get any worse, right? Metcalf, interesting.
Lockett might be back.
Matchup against the Jets, but mainly because Metcalf spends most of his routes lined up on the perimeter on the left, but mostly avoids Sauce Gardner, I think. That said, the Jets have two other cornerbacks that they line up that are top 20, top 25 guys with a pro football focus, so it's not necessarily a matchup to target. But that said, I feel like Metcalf's easily the best option there.
Okay, and who's the other one you picking? Is it Stevenson?
Probably from a standpoint, I know he was beyond disappointing last week, but the touches should be there.
Miami not good versus the run.
Yeah, and concern for the Dolphins in the sense of, are they going to be able to sustain drives as well with Teddy Bridgewater? Because in the 3 starts that Bridgewater had, I don't believe they scored 20 points in any of them. So feels like more of a favorable game script for the Patriots. I mean, clearly that's what Vegas is thinking for New England to actually be favored at home in this game.
Okay, so you're leaning Metcalf and Stevenson?
Mm-hmm.
I am as well. Okay, so we are consensus here. Jose, Jody, and I agree on both of them, Metcalf and Stevenson. So good luck in your championship matchup. Next one we have is Chubb or Dobbins or Najee this week.
Chubb, Dobbins, or Najee. Let's eliminate Dobbins, who felt like he was outplayed by Gus Edwards last week. Plus, he's basically a 0 in the passing game. Chubb, not much better, but I feel on a week-to-week basis that Chubb is a much more reliable bet to get you 20 touches and whatnot. So, and then by default, that means Najee Harris. Not a particularly great matchup, I guess, for Pittsburgh's offense in general, but you have to like over the last couple of months, Harris has kind of had a little bit of nose for the end zone, and it's the high snap share that he plays week to week. I'd rather stick with him. And I mean, easily in this particular, it's a volume thing, and I don't have a lot of confidence that Dobbins is going to be more than, I don't know, if I had to set the over-under on touches for Dobbins in this game, it'd be maybe a dozen. The other two guys should be comfortably ahead of that.
Okay, I lean Chubb here as well. I'm just going to stick with my stud in this scenario. So both of us on Chubb. Next one we have is going back and forth between Ramondre Stevenson as my RB2. It doesn't look like he finished the sentence. Never mind. Okay, next up we have is Godwin, ETN, D-Hop, or AJB. PPR.
I'm sticking with ETN.
What is this, a 5-man league, Giselle? Jesus.
I'm sticking with ETN in this regard. He's been so good, and the Texans have been completely just terrible all year against the run. They're the worst rush defense in the league.
What if Hurts is back? Does that change your opinion?
Jalen Hurts?
Yep.
I'm trying to see how that factors into what the question was.
That was for isn't that for AJ?
AJ Brown?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have difficulty, like when you rattle off like 4 or 5 names, my brain's kind of calculated, and then I usually forget after about the second one. So it's kind of like.
So yeah, it's Godwin, ETN, Hopkins, or AJ Brown.
Yeah. See. Probably I'm reducing. Gosh, those are all like options that I feel like should be in your lineup.
I mean, I don't. Who's starting over these guys?
Yeah, like you're having to bench more than one of these guys. Like no one.
These are all top 15 options at their respective positions.
No wonder you have these teams in the championship game. I don't know how you were able to assemble. Kudos to you for assembling such a badass roster. I don't feel like there's a really bad answer here. I want to say with after the what we saw last week that I would drop Hawkins, but if Colt McCoy's back, that kind of changed things in that particular matchup there.
I mean, I have AJ Brown in my top 5 this week.
There you go. If Jalen Hurts, I mean, is it really a downgrade from a passing standpoint with Gardner Minshew back there?
No, it's not.
He looked great, from a fantasy perspective last week.
And then you have so Tracy McSorley is gone, thank God. So we have Colt McCoy in, which is Hopkins has been, at least relevant with Colt McCoy. Godwin here, I mean, Godwin has been pretty inconsistent. I mean, Brady in general, this offense just they can't score. It seems like. Where does Godwin come in your rankings this week versus Carolina?
Hang on, let me look. See, the over-under in the game is only 40.5. That's pretty low for a Tom Brady game. Let's look. Oh, I want to say I saw Godwin around wide receiver 13 in my lineup. Just letting it load here for a second. Yeah, I've got him at he's at 11.
Okay.
I've got Godwin at 11, and Devontae Adams is 12 right now. I've got Hopkins at 14. So.
Carolina bottom 6 on the year versus the wide receiver position. Let's see how they do out of the slot. So let's go to team defenses versus wide receivers. Let's go versus the slot. Carolina.
AJ Brown is 7. You said he was top 5 for you, so that's completely understandable.
So Carolina is actually middle of the pack for slot receivers, so 16th overall. So it's not gonna be matchup dependent too much here.
Keep waiting for Mike Evans to have a blow up game. It feels like you do, but the way Tom Brady's been playing for the most part for over the last couple of months, it's so hard to go out to be bold, in particular in week 17. It's too hard to be bold and say, all right, this is the Mike Evans week. What I'm saying is, if I were to be bold and say this is the Mike Evans week, I would probably downgrade Godwin a little bit, but I can't. Like I said, I can't do that bold.
Okay, so your two are, you said ETN. Who's the other one?
Looking at rankings, I've got AJ Brown comfortably ahead of the other guys. They're kind of you have Godwin 11. Luke is 14. I have AJ Brown at 7.
Where do you have ETN?
At running back, let me switch over.
I'm at 11. Could definitely go higher with Houston. 8. Yeah, let's say mine might be higher. Houston's given up 5.1 yards per carry. So let's go. I like ETN and AJ Brown. Is that who you're saying as well?
Yep.
Okay. We both agree here, Giselle. Best of luck. If it does not pan out, it's because your team's too good. Let's move on. Someone else just wishing everybody best of luck. Ramondre, Pacheco, Dillon, Rashad White, Pittman, Sutton, Algier. I'm going to read that again for you. That's a long list. Pick 2, Ramondre Stevenson, Isaiah Pacheco, Dillon, Rashad White, Pittman, Sutton, Algier.
I don't think you can think of Dillon unless Aaron Jones gets ruled out. Then he, to me, becomes interesting. I have Ramondre easy ranked quite a bit higher than Pacheco.
Mm-hmm. Me as well.
And the receivers again.
Receivers again were Pittman, Sutton, and then last one was not a receiver, but tied in with them was Algier.
Algier's been so good the last couple of weeks, but honestly, the lack of involvement as a receiver, I think, always kind of restricts his upside, even though, again, he's been so good over the last couple of weeks, and it's a great matchup for them. Interesting, but like I said, he's comfortably rated below the other guys. And the receivers, they all have, concerns for me. I want to say Pittman is the guy who I've rated highest, but after the debacle we saw last week from Nick Foles, do you really want to take that chance again?
Yeah, Pittman I have at 24 right now, but Sutton has a good matchup versus Kansas City.
Yep.
I think I'm going to go double running back here, Ramondre and Pacheco.
I mean, looking at my raw rankings, sometimes you have to differentiate between your wide receivers and your running backs, but that looks like the 2 highest for me as well.
Okay, yep. I think game script favors both of them as well. So Ramondre and Pacheco it is here. How about Dotson, Jody, Pittman, Marquise Brown, Jacoby Myers? So I think Jacoby Myers is the easy one out for me. Marquise Brown is probably easy one out for me as well.
Jody, top 20 receiver for me this week. Should be plenty of volume in Kansas City. That game has a pretty high over under, and Denver should be comfortably behind with plenty of garbage time potential.
Okay, so I like Jody as well. So Pittman or Dotson for you, or Marquise Brown?
Looking at my raw rankings, Pittman is highest, but like I said, that's it goes with a risk. Billy, why don't you decide? Because I know you're one of the bigger Jahan Dotson fans. So
I like Jahan Dotson this week, but the splits with Wentz is a little scary. I'm going to go Pittman this week, even with Foles at helm. I still like Pittman over Dotson, so I'm going to go Jody and Pittman.
There's nowhere for Foles to go but up, right?
Correct. Yeah, it can't go much worse than it was last week.
As bad, or even worse than last week, I would think they'd quickly bench him and go back to Matt Ryan or anybody else.
Okay, like we said, Giselle has 5 teams in the championship. So his next question is Pittman, Rachaad White, or Goddard. Pick 2. So you're sitting one of those guys. Sitting one of Pittman, Rachaad White, or Goddard.
Yeah, so I wish I could give a better clue. It's almost like Rachaad White and Leonard Fournette are both almost the same players every week, and it feels like the way they're using them and all that. I like them both from week to week, but so Goddard, not a huge sample size to work with him because he missed so much time. He came back last week, was pretty favorably involved. I have him as my tight end 6 this week, but last time I remember looking, the Saints were, if not the best, they were one of the best defenses in the league against tight ends. Does that still hold true? Yep. The Saints rank number 1 against tight ends from a fantasy perspective. They've only given up 2 touchdowns all year and 462 yards, which is the fewest in the league. So it's kind of a rough matchup for Goddard. Plus, as of right now, we don't know who even will be under center. Now, I think regardless of who it is, it's going to be an above-average option. But still, that should factor in, I think, to your decision. So I'm probably sitting Goddard.
Okay.
Even though I have him with my tight end 6, in this perspective, tight end 6 isn't necessarily as good as wide receiver 20 or so in full PPR.
You know my rule of thumb. I don't like to start a part-time running back over a full-time running back or wide receiver or a tight end. Now in this scenario, Rachaad White only saw 38% of snaps last week, so I'm going to sit White of this group and play Goddard and Pittman. We are nearing time. We have a lot of questions, so the next ones we're going to do are rapid fire because I am looking at the scroll here, and we're about a quarter of the way through the questions. We're going to be here all night, so let's just go rapid fire real quick. We have a lot of people saying they made the championship.
To Discord.
Yeah, so if we don't get your questions, head to Discord, guys. We'll get those answered, but we're going to go through these as quick as we can now so we can make sure we get to as many as we can. How about this one? DJ Chark or Dotson this week? And Malik Davis or Rachaad White? I think we answered that one earlier. We both picked Rachaad White over Davis, so DJ Chark or Dotson?
I like Chark. I like the game.
Interesting. Okay, I lean Dotson here, but I can understand the thought process of Chark. Next one we have is choose 3: Kamara, Waddle, Swift, McKinnon, Zeke, or Godwin. So again, Kamara, Waddle, Swift, McKinnon, Zeke, or Godwin.
Yeah, I like Zeke tonight, and
yep.
I have concerns with Waddle right now if Teddy Bridgewater starts. So I don't know if Billy picked the other one.
I'm gonna go Kamara, Zeke, and Godwin. Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, we have half point PPR. Pick 1: Andrews, Dawson, Knox, or Hayden Hurst. Andrews. How about you?
Let's go. Let's go with Andrews. Let's hope that he can finally turn it around.
Okay. We have Corey Davis or Richie James.
How did Davis do with Mike White under center? I thought he did pretty well, but still, Richie James should have a better, higher target share.
Yeah, I like Richie James this week. Okay. They're tilting over the Gabe Davis, Jerick McKinnon start. How about this one? Adams, Godwin, ETN, or Ramondre Stevenson? Sit 1.
That's a rare case where you could argue sitting Adams, but I probably right now looking at my rankings, actually Adams would be the odd man out.
Yeah, I think I might sit Adams here as well, Jody. So I agree with you as well on this one. So we are Jody and I are agreeing tonight. This one comes from Discord. Jerry is an Apple engineer and he can't figure out how to ask questions on YouTube. So Jerry, I'm gonna let you know you have to create an account. I told you this on Discord. You have to create an account to be able to comment on YouTube. But okay, Apple engineer over here wants to know Gallup or Hollywood Brown.
Gosh, I think I have them ranked pretty similar, but I have a slight lean on Gallup.
I have a slight lean on Hollywood, actually. Okay. I just think that Dallas gets ahead and they're going to abandon the passing game tonight, even though Tennessee.
Entirely possible. I'm just waiting for Hollywood to do something. That's my hesitation with him.
So we're split here. Jerry. You get to flip a coin, be the deciding factor. How about London, Rashad White, Olave, Pacheco? Pick one.
Checo, we've talked about him. I guess everyone in the full-time fantasy world owns Rashad White, apparently. Every question has involved him so far.
And we were held much higher on him versus ECR in our pre-draft rankings. So all of our listeners listened, and they drafted him, Jody.
That means they should all own DJ Chark, too.
That's right. I picked Pacheco here as well. Olave coming off a hamstring injury. I don't like the matchup versus Philly either, so I'm going to lean Pacheco as well. Pick two, Kirk, Mike Williams, or Jacobs?
Probably, as tough it is to say Christian Kirk might be the guy I'm sitting just because, like I said, Texans secondary, we're supposed to do rapid fire. We talked about it earlier.
Jody and I
are
mind melding tonight because I also was sitting Christian Kirk of these three. So Josh Jacobs in a shitty matchup, but I have a feeling they're just going to run the ball all night. Yeah, it's volume-based play. I was joking around and said 5-man league. He's in 6-man league. Oh, yeah, that's great. Okay. The rest of his leagues, he says, are 10 or 12-man leagues. How about Juwan Johnson or David Njoku?
I'll actually have to. Billy, you can talk it out. I'll have to actually consult my rankings there.
I think without looking at my rankings, I know I have David Njoku ranked higher.
Yes, I got Njoku at 12, Johnson at 16.
Yep, I'm about the same. So I'm going to lean here David Njoku pretty easily. Let's take a look at this. What does this one say? Tips like a sneaky play. Darius Slayton 1 week or Josh Reynolds. So Slayton or Josh Reynolds. Which one do you like? It has to be Slayton, right?
Something interesting today. He's going to be rated a lot higher, yes, but I saw some hesitations on him. Hit me up on Discord and let me get back to you on that. But yes, I'm going to rate, even with the negative, whatever it was I read, Slayton still should be started ahead of Reynolds, who's like, what, wide receiver 4 at best?
Okay, so yeah, I go Slayton here, but message Jody on Discord. He'll give you a better breakdown. Next one we have is Haskins or Knight. I like Knight's matchup for Seattle.
Yeah, and he's continued to take the majority of the carries over there. Agreed.
Okay, so we both agree with Knight over Haskins.
Such an unknown tonight.
Wow, this is a deep one. I love deep questions like this. How about Royce Freeman, Malik Davis, or Hassan Haskins? I go Haskins here.
I do too, because Haskins should be involved as the pass catching back. Malik Davis, you're basically touchdown or nothing with him.
Jerry Bryant listening to the pod. I'm not an Apple engineer, but I am a computer programmer. It's just as bad either way. That's great. Oh man. Okay, last couple questions we have here. Gabe Davis, Deontay, Jacoby Myers, Dotson, or Hodgins?
I'm going to defer to Billy. These are all his boys here. Probably with me, it's Deontay. Of course, we're still desperate for that first touchdown, but
I have Deontay at 26 and Gabe Davis at 27. So I agree. Jody and I are mind melding tonight. I got Deontay, so I'm going to go Deontay here as well. It's very close for me with Gabe Davis. Kamara missing practice 2 days in a row, starting Taysom over Njoku and Waller? Question mark. Yep, I have Taysom Hill ranked higher than both those guys in my rankings.
I do too.
Okay, who would you put in flex? I think that's Romeo Dobbs, Dotson, AJ Dillon, or Rashad White.
I know Billy's going to pick Dotson for you, but A.J. Dillon becomes really, really interesting if Aaron Jones sits. But Dillon's been hot enough where you could argue for him anyway.
I would pick Dotson, Jody. Yes, that is accurate. That being said, if Watson's ruled out, which I expect him to be, Romeo's going to move into probably wide receiver 30 range for me, and I would play Romeo over Dotson if Watson is ruled out.
Woo, sizzling hot.
Yep. Don't I like this, Giselle. Don't forget to like the stream. Championship week. And last question of the night: Orton or Juwan Johnson? I think that is. Who that? I think he meant Otten.
Let's look.
I think I have Juwan Johnson ahead of him. I'll say Orton's retired.
Yeah, I've got Otten at 21 and Juwan's at 16.
Okay, I'm the same range. So that is it, everybody. Have a good week in your championship matchups. Thanks for being a part of the full-time family.
Come back and tell us how you did.
Let us know how you did. Hit us up in Discord. Good luck. Take care. We'll be back next week as we enter into the playoffs and get ready for the FFWC Playoff Drafts Championship. If you don't know about it, I will post something on Twitter as well. I'll put it in the show notes here later tonight. It's an actual snake draft, and we draft for the playoffs at FFWC. And there is a grand prize. It's a whole bunch of good shebangs up there. It's already in the contest lobby. I'll put the notes inside of the show notes. Take care. Good luck in matchups. Catch you next week, folks.